Hello, and good morning, evening, or afternoon, depending on when you are tuning in to this latest episode of Susty Talks from Edie. These are our short but sweet 20-minute or less podcasts designed to keep us all a bit more connected and informed on sustainable business, even if we are pressed for time. And it's great to have on the line with me for this episode Magda Al-Nugaidi, who is Managing Director at Uncommon, a B Corp certified co-working space. Thank you so much for your time, Magda. How are you this morning?
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me as part of the episode. All great today, and very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad that we've managed to align diaries and chat, because I was super interested to hear about Uncommon. But for our listeners who might not be familiar with the business, it'd be great to get an introduction in your own words.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in the most simple terms at Uncommon, we provide exceptional spaces for work, which include offices as well as desks for individual entrepreneurs. All of our buildings are located in London, covering various locations from London Bridge to Fulham, Liverpool Street, Holborn and Islington. So really, covering pretty much the full map of London. I think what's worth mentioning is that sustainability and experience are at the heart of everything we do at Uncommon. And our buildings really reflect the strong emphasis we put on those areas. I think just maybe a couple of words about me. So I've been in the business for 6 years now, and one of my key focuses, as well as really a personal interest, is to really think what sustainability means for Uncommon and make sure that ESG is part of our overall strategy.
Great, super fascinating work that you're up to, and it's always great, I think, to speak to someone that is, doesn't have a title like Head of Sustainability, but is still really driving that agenda. So as Managing Director, how are you involved with that sustainability journey, and were you involved in the B Corp certification journey?
Yes, so I think my role is very varied. But about 4 years ago, we started to talk a lot more around that topic of sustainability and what really ESG means for us as an organization. We have always had a really strong focus on specific areas, whether it's the design of our buildings, the ergonomy of it, biophilia, which is basically the love for plants. That's always been something that was part of the business. And of course, a really strong focus on people. So whether our team, our clients, the relationship with suppliers. But I suppose it wasn't particularly structured, like we didn't have a framework to help us to focus. So about 4 years ago, we started to really map out what this really looks like. And of course, being an operator in the real estate industry, so one of the top industries when it comes to carbon footprint and emissions. So something that we knew it is really important to start measuring, as well as setting really the targets of what we really want to achieve in the future, including being carbon neutral, carbon negative, and then furthermore, carbon zero. So looking at the different parts, ESG can be a very wide topic, and it can be a very scary field to start approaching. And B Corp was one of the framework we looked at, and we looked at several others. And we narrowed down that this framework specifically works extremely well for our business because it will give us the focus that we need. So I started the process quite some time ago. So we have been B Corp certified business for over a year now. It took us probably about 14 months prior to that to go through the process. So from filing the application to then going through what ultimately was a bit of a prolonged waiting process, going through the verification part, so sort of mini audit, and then eventually getting the accreditation in May 2023. So we decided we were very ambitious. I think we are a very ambitious business. So the application, we decided to do it in-house. We came together as a team and we worked collectively on the document. I think looking back at it now, it was a very ambitious thing to do to start the process ourselves, especially that we are a small business and the resources are not always available. So it was our internal team that basically works on absolutely every single other element in the business that got involved. So thinking about it now, we potentially would have got a bit more external help, but nonetheless, we are extremely proud that we went through the process together as a team, and it feels definitely very rewarding, and especially when we went through the verification process. And whilst it was a very thorough and stringent process, we really realized that we have really pushed something really positive. So we're making really a positive wave here. The feedback we got from B Lab, so ultimately the people behind B Corp, was fantastic. Our score was almost very close to 100 points, and in the first attempt, that's something to be really proud of. So we are very happy we did that. We are now in the process of looking at what the sort of new scoring system will look like. So there is a new assessment process that is coming through from B Lab, and we will be recertifying now in 2 years. So you have to do it every 3 years. We have been a B Corp for a year now, so we've got a couple of years to really digest what we need to do. But in the meantime, of course, we are proceeding with our ESG agenda and the commitments we've made. So we continue to work on it on a regular basis. It's part of DNA. It's part of our day-to-day operations. So we continue with that.
Great to hear that. Our publisher, Faversham House, certified as a B Corp this year, so I definitely relate to a lot of what you've said. And something I found interesting about Uncommon's B Corp journey is that for members, they can access a one-to-one clinic if they want to learn more about B Corp certification and pursue that. So it'd be great to hear a little bit more about that and about some of the most common pieces of advice that the team will give during those clinics. What do people most want to know about the journey?
Sure, absolutely. I think, like to start with, the most sort of impactful part of Uncommon is not only what we do as a business and what our team does. It's actually having the network of over 300 companies who occupy our spaces and being able to support them, influence them, help them with like some of the educational elements as well as when we can, and make sure that, they get the most value out of us as a partner. And us becoming a B Corp definitely started some really positive conversations with our clients. Some were already on the journey themselves or thinking about it. Some didn't really know what B Corp was, and us talking to them about it, about the framework, actually got them really interested. They started to look into the framework and understanding like what that would look like for them, what the benefits are and what the commitments are. I would say that, when I meet with companies to discuss B Corp or whatever other framework it might be that they are considering, is to firstly really understand what those frameworks are. I know that B Corp is not suitable for every business. So my first advice is always that really understand what the framework is and what the suitability of it in your specific business. I think another part is, and this is maybe going a little bit more into the logistics of it. So when a company really wants to go on that process, I think, first of all, they have to really make sure that the business can adapt their sort of legal documentation, so their articles of association, to capture the commitment to driving positive impact and having environmental and social considerations in every decision-making process. So that is something that it is required. I think another part is, and I've mentioned that already, is that there is a new assessment process that is being put in place by B Lab right now, which will be, I believe, more balanced and fair, but ultimately more stringent. So I think understanding what that looks like is very important. I think another element is that there is a pre-assessment that is every company can do. So before really going for the full life assessment, every company can go in and answer a smaller sort of application with fewer questions, but that would give them a good steer how far they are from, the required number of points at this stage, which is 80 points. And I think like moving into more of the internal elements, a super important factor is to have the leaders buy-in. There are elements in this framework and in B Corp which will need to be built into the company's DNA. So having the leadership team, management team, having that buy-in is really vital. And the next thing is to obviously have the wider team's buy-in. So explaining the purpose and the benefits of being a B Corp so that the team can really understand that and therefore feel that they are really part of it. And like in general, I think that B Corp is a fantastic movement, and being part of it provides not only a solid framework which can guide the business in the right direction, but also a really amazing opportunity to build a network of like-minded companies and like-minded leaders who can collaborate together. There are plenty of opportunities to do so. Only a couple of weeks ago, I had an opportunity to go to a B for Good Leaders conference, which is a bit of an offshoot of B Corp. And it's just so inspiring meeting people who have very similar purpose. Right. And so there are plenty of opportunity to do that if a company sort of joins the movement.
Yeah, I did want to touch on the external engagement piece of B Corp as well, which I think we've started to get into. So we've really looked at what it looks like behind the scenes. But we find that B Corp is something that people actually understand quite easily when they see it, not always the case with all certifications. And I wanted to get your feeling on whether having that certification and good credentials acts as a differentiator when you're looking for people to use your co-working spaces, because I know it's been a hard time for offices and workspaces as the pandemic hit and as we shift towards more of a hybrid working economy.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think the pandemic highlighted really the importance of personal well-being, the need for quality really of the environments we live and work in. But it also made us realize that living and working in isolation doesn't have the best impact on mental well-being. And of course, as you mentioned, we went through the period of solely working from home to then the hybrid model. But we can definitely see that businesses are driving to get their teams to work more from their offices. Having teams in one location where people can interact, collaborate, and bring the company's culture to life is definitely something our clients often talk about. And we really see Uncommon as an enabler in doing that. Our buildings have various accreditations, of course, meet the highest of sustainability standards. And we really focus on aspects such as quality of air, maximizing natural light, inclusive and very mindful design, breakout spaces full of plants, quiet zones, well-being rooms, rooftops and outdoor spaces, and of course our cafes that use sustainable products and ingredients. And all of this is really to help our clients thrive and to be really the best part of their working day. And personally, I think that sustainability in general, whilst incredibly important, should be now part and parcel of every business these days. But I definitely can see that for Uncommon, it has been a differentiator.
Yeah, I can imagine that, and that's something that a lot of businesses are having to navigate, I think. And something I also wanted to talk about was essentially how other parts of the sector and the network of organisations you rely on are engaging with you on this journey. So, for example, with buildings, we often hear, oh, I'd love to go B Corp, I need to get the data from my landlord, or if it's a new building, I need to work with my developer to get that data. And as you mentioned, even offices which don't procure a great deal of physical stuff will still be procuring things like food and beverages. So how did you engage with your suppliers and landlords or developers to really get going on this B Corp journey?
Yeah, so I think one of the benefits for us as a business is to start with that we own our buildings. So for us, it is incredibly easy to directly drive initiatives which help us in minimizing our carbon footprint. So we do not have landlords, but we are a landlord to many companies. So on that note, when we speak to our clients, and whether it is about their sustainability journeys, the framework they want to adapt and so on, we often talk about how actually the environmental side of things, providing, of course, like that their entire business is based in one of our locations. The environmental side of things is really looked after by us, right? So they can have a huge impact in terms of contributing to lowering of our emissions by using our spaces in the most efficient way, of course. But us driving those initiatives as an owner and landlord, ultimately companies who occupy Uncommon benefit from that immediately. Because if we are a B Corp and we are on a net zero journey, our clients will ultimately benefit from that. But of course, there are challenges when it comes to the supply chain. And when we acquire a building, so one of our key priorities is not to build from scratch, but actually repurpose existing buildings. So that's one of the elements that we built into our sustainability strategy. So when we acquire a building and we do renovations, of course, we need to work with our third-party suppliers and contractors who are delivering that work for us, and actually understand what their practices are, and also inform them what our requirements are. So we do a lot of the checks ahead of time before sort of agreeing which supplier we are going to work with. So we need to really understand what that looks like. And in terms of like the wider supply chain, actually through the B Corp framework, we got quite a few good ideas how to engage with our suppliers, and also how to get the data from them. So we are using a platform that our suppliers need to complete before we can start working with them. And in that platform, there are several questions asking for very specific information around their working practices, around their environmental practices. And for us, it is really important that the suppliers that we work with are at least on the journey and are aware of who we are as a business, and the fact that we will hold them accountable to specific elements. We have several of suppliers who we started to have the conversations a few years ago, knowing that they haven't really explored what their respective sustainability journeys are yet, but we said how important it is to us. And I think there is a part of getting our community, whether it is our clients, our suppliers, or really anybody that we come across, really excited about it. So really talk about the purpose of it and the fact that, together we have, our impact multiplies, and getting to really work with those companies and collaborate so that we can push that needle forward.
Yeah, thank you, Magda. I clearly neglected to mention that clearly clients are looking for information as well as suppliers, and the way you frame all of that chain as a community really gives me some food for thought. But Magda, I think we're nearly out of time for this episode, so thank you so much for sharing your learnings, which I hope will give lots of food for thought for our listeners. Thank you so much for coming on Susty Talks.
Sarah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.